So, a little background. I dated this girl during my senior year of high school. I'm 20 now, so it was a few years back, but it's still vivid in my head. For privacy, I won't use her real name, so I'll call her Lily. Lily and I met through our job, which I now see was a risky start. Before we dated, there were warning signs I should have heeded. For example, she'd hang around our workplace for hours just to watch me, and I'd catch her gazing at me now and then. A few months into our relationship, things turned pretty toxic. I felt smothered constantly. I had no time for my hobbies, friends, or even me. She was the kind who'd demand to know where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing every minute. If I missed a call, it'd turn into 25 missed calls and a flood of texts that always sparked a fight, even if I was just grabbing a snack. It got so bad I couldn't game with my buddies without it blowing up. So, we broke up, but not before she tried everything to pull me back. She'd wait outside my job for me to clock out. When I'd leave, she'd trail me to my car, block me from getting in, and plead her case. I was fed up. One night, she showed up wanting to talk. I agreed to chat, not sure what else to do. Lily was also threatening to sue me over something trivial I'd rather not detail, using it as leverage to force a conversation. So, I sat in her car. She recycled the same old lines I'd heard 100 times. I told her I was done, but then her mom called. She twisted it into a threat, saying, "If you don't stay and talk, I'll have her sue you now." I snapped, "Forget this," and tried to leave. The door was locked, though, and as I unlocked it, she grabbed my arm and dug her nails in. I was stunned. She'd only been verbally harsh before, never physical. That look on her face was pure venom, and I'll admit, it rattled me. I'm a tall guy, and she was tiny, so I knew I could overpower her if needed. I yanked her door open and tried to step out, but she clung tight. I told her to let go, but she wouldn't budge. I kept pulling, my skin starting to tear. So, I made a quick move, pulling her toward me onto the passenger seat, which gave me a split second to escape to my car. I sped home faster than ever, and I wish I could say that was the end, but it wasn't. Sadly for me, Lily and I are practically neighbors, living a few blocks apart. That night, while I was gaming, I heard a car outside, but I chalked it up to my game. I was playing Call of Duty that night. I'd also smoked some weed, which probably amplified the sounds. A little later, as I played, I heard a tap on my window. I figured I was just paranoid. Weed can make me jittery, especially after that night. But that thought vanished when I heard another tap and a female voice calling my name. I knew it was Lily and panic set in. My window blinds are flimsy, so I knew she could see me. I didn't want to open it, suspecting she might be dangerous. I pretended not to hear, hoping she'd leave. But of course, she didn't. After a minute, she started banging on the window. Her tone shifted from soft and sorry to harsh and furious. I couldn't catch everything, but it was stuff like, "You can't treat me like this. You're a jerk." I had to act. I didn't want to bother the cops, but looking back, I absolutely should have called. Instead, I made a dumb choice to open my door and ask what she wanted. I demanded why she was here and why she couldn't leave me be. Her tone softened again, asking for her jacket back. I shouted she couldn't show up at my window at 2 a.m. begging for a jacket, and if she didn't leave, I'd call the police. That set her off. She screamed and sobbed uncontrollably. For a second, I felt guilty, but then my heart sank when I noticed something that still chills me. She wasn't alone. To her left was a thick tree in my front yard, and peeking from it was a hooded figure. She saw my gaze shift to the tree and knew I'd spotted them. She lunged for my arm and grabbed me. As she did, the figure bolted from behind the tree, sprinting toward my window. My instincts kicked in, and I slammed the window shut on Lily's arm. She shrieked in pain and yanked it back. I locked it just as the other person reached it. My heart pounded, and I could barely breathe. I flashed my phone dialing 911, and they rushed back to her car, started it, and sped off. I was in total shock, barely processing it. An officer came by, took my story, and said they'd follow up if anything came of it. Of course, with no evidence, there wasn't much they could do, like most 911 calls. As far as I know, she faced no legal action. As for their intent, she's had people jumped and robbed before. so I wouldn't be surprised if they planned that or worse. I'm just damn lucky that figure peeked out. My name is Sarah, and I haven't really slept much since last Wednesday. Not because I can't, but because I don't feel secure shutting my eyes anymore. That's what happens, I suppose, when someone you trusted reveals a side you'd only see in nightmares. I ended things with my boyfriend Jake 3 weeks ago. It wasn't messy, at least not right away. We'd been together for just under a year. Early on, he was kind. He was overly attentive, always texting and calling like any new partner might. At first, it felt like true love, the kind you feel grateful for. But over time, it grew possessive. He'd get mad if I didn't reply fast enough. He'd ask odd things like who I'd laugh with that day or if any guys had glanced my way. Sometimes he'd pop up at my job uninvited, lingering outside the window like he was keeping tabs. He even showed up at the clubs I hit with friends during girls' night, dragging me home against my will. My friends started despising him for it. He never trusted me, but I didn't break it off until he suggested putting a tracker on my phone to keep us safe. Not just location sharing, but an actual tracker. That was my breaking point. I told him we were done, and he cried at first, then went quiet. I remember hanging up from our last call with this weird knot in my stomach, like I was bracing for trouble. For a bit, things were calm. I blocked his number and tried to get back to normal. I started hitting the gym again, cooking proper dinners, just trying to reclaim my peace. But about a week after the split, I started getting odd messages. Not from Jake directly, but from unknown numbers with no caller ID. They were brief, usually just a cryptic line. I didn't respond, replying only eggs on spam. I just blocked each one as it popped up. I didn't tell my friends. I convinced myself it was a scam or some bot, since I've always gotten junk texts. But then it went beyond messages. One night, I was in bed and got up to use the bathroom. I stepped into the hallway outside my room and thought I heard a faint sound from downstairs in the entryway. I'm not the type to investigate noises. I get spooked in the dark, which is why I've always preferred being with someone, so I'm not alone. I didn't go check. I told myself it was the heater creaking or something. I've lived in this flat for nearly 2 years, mostly with my ex, Mark, then Jake, but rarely solo. I know it sounds, and that noise wasn't familiar. So, after the bathroom, I hurried back to bed, pulling the thin blanket over me like it'd shield me. Another night, around 2 a.m., I swear I heard a door in my apartment creak open outside my room. It woke me, so I wasn't sure if it was real or a dream. Still, my pulse was pounding. I texted my family group chat with my brother and parents, just saying, I keep hearing weird noises every night. I'm freaked out. Of course, they were asleep, so I drifted off again. That weekend, I got back from my brother's place and instantly felt something was off. Nothing was stolen or smashed, but it seemed like doors were left ajar in ways I never do. It might sound crazy, but it's true. I always leave doors shut or nearly shut when I leave. Every door in the apartment was wide open. No breeze either. I keep the AC running most of the time. I moved through the place slowly, checking each room. My gut sank when I saw the hallway closet slightly ajar. I always keep that door closed. It swings open if left unlocked, and there's no reason to leave it. I stared at it for what felt like a minute before stepping closer. When I pulled it open, nothing was there. Just coats and boots, same as always. That night, I jammed a chair under my bedroom door and slept with a knife under my pillow. I left the bedside lamp on. I must have nodded off because I woke to a soft rustling sound. I sat up, dazed, and noticed the light was off and the room was pitch black. I glanced at the door. It was wide open, despite the chair. At first, I thought I dreamed securing it or sleepwalked, but I was dead wrong. I saw something at the foot of my bed in the dark. It was just a black shape at first, but when I realized it was the top of someone's head, it was too late. I felt 2 hands slide over my feet, and I lost it. I screamed until my lungs were empty. Then I recognized Jake's voice telling me to calm down. When I kept screaming, he climbed on me and clamped a hand over my mouth. He said he wasn't there to hurt me, just to talk. He wouldn't move his hand until I agreed to stay quiet. So I nodded. The first thing I asked was how he got in. He said he'd made a copy of my key when we were together, for emergencies. Never mentioned it. Total psycho move. He must have slipped out with my keys one night to do it. As I listened, I thought about grabbing the knife, but I was too terrified to act. If I did, I'd have to use it. He kept repeating he wasn't there to harm me, just to talk. But it felt like he was there to frighten me into taking him back. I was too scared to say no, so I said yes, but begged him to leave for the night since I was shaken. I think he stayed in my bed for about 30 minutes before he left. When he was gone, I called the police and reported the break-in, saying I feared he was still around so they'd come fast. When they arrived, I filed an official report, which I later used for a restraining order with friends backing me up since I couldn't prove the entry. A detective traced the fake numbers to his phone via a spoofing app, helping the case. I stayed with my parents until I found a new place. My advice to all women out there is at the first hint of mental instability in a partner, consider leaving fast to stay safe. I still carry the trauma of waking to him in my room, and I had to think about using a knife on him. I dated Vanessa for a year and a half. At first, she was one of the most intense people I'd ever met. Not in a negative way. She was passionate, magnetic, and could chat about anything for hours. When she spoke, it was like she drew you into her orbit. The first few months were amazing. She'd surprise me with small gifts, leave sticky notes with quotes on my fridge, text me good morning every single day without fail. But that intensity had a shadowy edge. She didn't do patience or uncertainty. Everything was either blissful or disastrous. If I was 10 minutes late replying to a text, she'd flood my phone. First anxious, then furious, then apologetic. It worsened gradually, almost unnoticed. She once accused me of flirting because I commented on an Instagram story from a guy I hadn't talked to since college. And when I mentioned something she did bothered me, she'd shut down entirely. I don't mean just go silent. She'd sit in my flat for hours staring at the ceiling, refusing to leave until I said all was okay. The first time she showed up at my office uninvited was 6 months in. She brought pastries and acted like it was adorable, like we were a rom-com pair. I brushed it off, but the next time was because I missed her call. She sat parked outside in the lot until I came down. She'd been sobbing. I told her it wasn't all right, and she just grinned and said, "You'd do the same for me, wouldn't you?" I had no reply for that. I kept justifying her actions. Past trauma, attachment issues, family baggage. I thought if I showed I'd stay, she'd settle. Instead, the more I gave, the more she demanded. Finally, I hit my breaking point. I told her it was over. She didn't shout or weep. She just stared at me in silence for what felt like ages. Then she nodded and said, "You think it's done for you, but it's not done for me." That left me icy. Like it wasn't even a warning, just a statement. I blocked her on everything that same night, changed my number, and asked my landlord about switching units. For a few weeks, I thought it worked. Then the notes began arriving. The notes had no stamps or return addresses, just my name scrawled on the envelope, often slipped between my door and the jamb. I kept some of those letters. The first one was almost sentimental. It said, "I miss cooking with you. I still use the pan you liked." The second one grew odd. It said, "You lock the windows twice before bed. You don't even realize it, but I do." The third note made me grab a bag. It said, "You wore your gray jacket Tuesday, the one with the torn pocket. Stitch that before it rips more." That was the same jacket I wore when I went to grab takeout that day across town in the drizzle. I hadn't seen anyone, not a soul I knew, but she had seen me. I knew then that moving across the city wouldn't suffice. I landed a job in Seattle, a solid one. I only told my sister and close family. I left no forwarding address. I even set up a new email for work, avoiding personal ties. I got a P.O. box under a different name. I thought that would do it, and for a while, it did. Many months passed, and I slept well. I started dating again. Nothing deep, just dinners and films. But I was smiling again. I felt human. Then one Friday, I opened my P.O. box and found an envelope. Just my name again. No stamp or return address. Inside was a Polaroid. It was of me leaving my apartment building, shot from behind. My headphones were on, and I held a bagel in one hand. It was chilly out. You could see frost on the ground and the skyline in the distance. I checked the back, and written in red ink, it said, "You hum when you're nervous." I didn't wait. I moved again, quicker this time. I paid cash for a rental in another part of town. Smaller complex, fewer neighbors. I switched jobs again and told my boss I had personal matters and needed to go remote. I adopted a rescue dog, a big Rottweiler mix, to help me cope. I deleted nearly everything online and ditched all apps and social media. I went off-grid for almost a year with no word, no letters or photos anymore. I let myself hope she was finally gone until the sticky note. It was stuck to my front door one afternoon when I returned from walking the dog. It was a pink note with red ink and said, "The dog's bark is loud." My stomach sank. I'd gotten him 3 months ago. No one had seen us together except maybe a delivery guy, whose face I never saw. I shaved my head that night. I told myself it was a fluke. But the next morning, another note was wedged under my mat. It said nicer. I called the police again and filed a report. They said without threats or vandalism, there was little they could do. I asked about a restraining order, and they said I'd need proof she'd been near me, which without spotting her or catching her was nearly impossible. I changed my routines and started noticing every detail, like securing the locks and closing the curtains. I didn't sleep much. I'd lie awake for hours staring at the roof, waiting for the floor to groan. 2 weeks passed with no trouble. I started to think maybe the notes were old. Maybe she'd left them earlier, and I'd only just found them. But deep down, I didn't buy it. Then one night, I woke up with this awful sensation, like someone had just been watching me and slipped out. I got up and checked the doors, windows, even under the bed, like I was a child again. Nothing was disturbed. But the next morning, taped to the outside of my back door, was a small envelope, carefully aligned. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in years. It was Vanessa and me in a carnival photo booth from when we were still together. We were laughing, and her arm was around me. But her smile had been scratched out with deep cuts like someone used a blade. I moved again, not across town this time, but out of the city entirely. I found a small lodge 2 hours into the hills. It was remote, ringed by oaks with only one path in. I paid in cash and used a fake name on the lease, which was month to month. I left my old phone behind, getting a new number in the process. I bought a burner for emergencies only. I worked remote via a company laptop with a secure VPN. No one besides my immediate family and my closest friend knew my location. I kept to myself. The only visitor I had was my food delivery driver dropping off occasional meals. For a whole month, I barely went into town. And it all held until I heard footsteps crunching the leaves outside. My dog went wild. The next morning, I found the tracks. They were boot prints, circling from window to window. There were no notes or anything left on the house, though. What else could I assume but that it was her, that she tracked me again, even though I still don't know for sure if it was her that time. I spent that whole day packing my stuff and driving back to my hometown. Today, I'm living in a house with 3 roommates who served in the army. If that's not a place people know to avoid, I don't know what is. Their SUVs, veteran stickers, and massive flags all over the front yard are a clear deterrent to Vanessa playing whatever twisted game she's playing. She's a mentally unstable stalker,